Chapter 101 to 104. I floated high in the desert, no living being in any direction besides me and Jin, who floated nearby, content to just observe. My sword of destruction flew around me, a faint glow that even made me hesitate to touch it. That inky energy that ever so slightly pulsed off of the blade as I used my aura to manifest my power of destruction. With a thought, the sword shot down onto the dunes, a massive pillar of sand exploded upwards on the impact, only to visible disintegrate as my sword unleashed its torrent of destruction. Grimm were rustled from their sleep, attracted to the attention in droves. Many I did not recognize, those that took refuge under the massive sands had decided to show themselves, baring their fangs and claws at me. I couldn't help but smile as my sword just flew at them, almost comical in the way it cut through the horde like a hot knife through butter. Their bodies didn't even have time to dissipate in their normal manner, my destructive energies consuming them entirely. I wasn't just playing around, I wanted to see what the drain was like on my aura reserves. While something that was noticeable with prolonged use, it appears as though I wouldn't burn myself out immediately upon using my newfound power. My reserves were still more or less around 90%, and that was with me intentionally pushing more into it than I needed to just mess around. Once all the Grimm were dead, I slowly glided to the ground, Jin following behind. Initial tests looking good. Unrefined, but the power was definitely there. Drake replied, the gauntlet still manifested on my arm. It might be more important to fine-tune your control at this point. Your power of destruction can easily go out of control if you aren't careful. I scratched my head. Yeah, I realized that. It was hard to rein in. I'm nowhere near using it against someone I don't want to completely obliterate yet. I let my other swords float out. I had another thought, after getting a feel for it, maybe I could make another attempt to utilize it without the sword in the future? Well, that's something to consider down the line. I admired my swords. Sword of Destruction. Mirage. Whisper. Ascalon. Dawnbreaker. I admired my growing collection with glee. Any plans on collecting the other relics? Jin pressed up against my back, putting her chin on my head. No. I shook my head. From what I saw, the relic of creation is keeping Atlas up in the air. I thought back to the information I was shown. Atlas, the kingdom to the north, a floating city. It was perhaps the technological focal point of Remnant, even drawing my attention by what they were able to create with dust as the backbone of their technology. It was an interesting creation, the relic of creation. It wasn't limited to 3 uses like the other relics, but it had other restrictions. It couldn't be used to directly harm, and it could only create one thing at a time, and anything created previously would disappear on the next use. Not to mention not being able to create life, among other things. Their entire city was kept suspended in the air due to the relic, though in public they claimed gravity dust. I couldn't in good conscience take that thing if it was quite literally supporting so many people's livelihoods. And the relic of choice, that just seems worthless to me. I pursed my lips. The relic of choice, the crown. It allowed one to peer into the future 3 times each century. I could pretty much guess that it would not function properly outside of Remnant, not to mention being utilized on something like me, an outside context it had no way to simulate possibilities with. Yeah, it wasn't true future sight. Essentially, it allowed one to peer into future possibilities. What a name, choice, I snorted. The best choice would be to not use it. The future was fleeting, ever-changing. Wanting to know the lottery number next month? Sure. Wanting to see who you marry 10 years down the line? Good luck, that future was probably shattered by your choice in viewing it. An interesting thought. Jin said with a small bit of humor. Besides, it seems like those 2 relics may help Remnant if it ever reaches that point. It seems that someone is aware of these things, based on what you've told me in the past. I looked up at the pointy-eared genie. Jin just hummed non-committedly. I have a question. Jin was about to open her mouth, but I stopped her. About your existence. I clarified. Oh. What does my master wish to know? She cooed. I'm your master now, huh? I already offered up my everything. Keep that up and I'll take you right here. I gave her a little slap on the butt, hearing a cute little noise from her. But my question is regarding if you can take anything inside the lamp with you. She tiled her head, clearly thinking. I have never had to consider this possibility before. I cannot take any living creatures inside with me. Why? I flipped my hand over, bringing out a stack of books. Figured you may want some reading material. Jin sucked in a long breath of air, hands reaching for the book on the top, looking at the title and not recognizing it. She grabbed it, hugging it to her chest. I have a couple days to kill before I'm needed anywhere, didn't know if you would prefer to read those inside your lamp or not. Jin looked at me, then back at the pile of books. She waved her hand, turning them into smoke as they entered the lamp she held in her hands. She looked like she was about to go in herself, but she paused, peeking her head over her shoulder and running a hand over her rear. This is yours whenever you want it, she declared, turning into mist and going into her little home. I stared at the lamp as it floated over into my hands. Well then. Surprised you didn't follow up on that. Me too. Gods know my libido is ridiculous, being a healthy young man and part devil. But honestly, I kinda want my first time to be with one of my girls. That is sickeningly wholesome. Doesn't she count as one of your girls? It's not the same thing. I shrugged. She's mine but not mine. That was about the best way I could describe it. Anyways. I willed the sword of destruction back over. Let's find some more targets. Use the boosted gear too, I want to try some tricks out. Sure, let's cut loose. I let out a laugh, seeing a small herd of Grimm on the horizon. Plenty of targets. I yawned, walking towards a familiar shop in Vale. The aged building a welcome sight as I walked inside, the bell expected. I'm back. I greeted the old man behind the counter. You're just in time, he said slowly, looking rather tired himself. I had to work through the night to finish this up before the deadline, he stated, pulling a wrapped object up from under the counter. It was like Christmas as I unwrapped it. Beautiful. I admired his work. The black leather goes perfectly with the handle of my blade, and these golden enamel decorations are just amazing. They were simplistic, yet retained a certain elegance that complemented the sword. Well, don't keep an old man waiting, try her out, the old man impatiently said. Bringing out Mirage, I slowly slid it into its new home. Nice and snug. Ha. The old man laughed. My wife used to say the same. I almost choked, catching a smirk from the old man. I saw some youngsters putting posters up all over town of you. He eyed me. I admit, I didn't take you seriously before, but you really going to compete, lad? Damn right. I acknowledged. Well, in the interest of an earlier retirement. He leaned in. What do you think your odds of winning are? He raised an eyebrow. I have confidence in myself, I said politely. He hummed to himself. I tell you what, you win this thing, and I won't charge you, but if you lose, you cover all of my losses. Alright, I'm in. It was a good deal, considering I didn't plan on losing. Oh ho, I look forward to it, young man. I smiled, bidding him goodbye as I left, new sheath in hand with Mirage stored inside. Admittedly, it felt a little strange walking around with my sword like this, but there was also a strange confidence that came with it by my side. The trek to Junior's bar was grabbing much more attention than before. People all over were turning their heads, pointing fingers, and whispering as I walked by. Hell, there were posters on practically every wall I passed, and I admit that Roman really does do good work with a camera. Walking towards the club, I flipped my hand, taking out the bag of bagels from the other day as I entered. Where have you been? I heard a voice shout at me. Happy to see you too, Miltia. I waved. All attention was on me now, it seemed like the whole gang was here. Told you, boss man, kid wasn't going to get cold feet, Roman commented. Yeah. Can we get this show on the road? I do have to set up for tonight's preliminaries. Miltia walked up to me in a huff. I've been looking everywhere for you. Do you have any idea how much we had to run around because of you? We had to start making plans in case you didn't show up. Sorry, I was preoccupied. I held my arms up in surrender, though I offered the bag to her. Bagel? She snorted, snatching the bag out of my hands, taking a bagel out and menacingly taking a bit out of it while giving me the stink eye. The bag suddenly disappeared from her hands, like glass shattering. Miltia huffed again, turning her gaze towards Neo, who offered the bag to Roman while stuffing one in her own mouth. Thanks for the snack, kid. Roman waved happily. I just rolled my eyes. How've you been, Miltia? She was worried about you, couldn't even sleep, thought you got in trouble. Melanie shouted, playing with an empty glass. Fuck off, Miltia growled, walking back up to the bar to sit down as I followed behind. Nice weapon, kid. Did you pick it up at an antique store? Roman asked, eyeing my obvious addition. Yes, actually. And funnily enough, I saw that exact hat there. I pointed at the hat on top of his head. Ha, nice. He chuckled. Well, at least you look presentable, thought I would have to give you some random mook's weapon. Neo tugged on his sleeve, gesturing. Oh, right. Neo did give you a backup weapon. He snickered along with his mute partner. All right, children. Junior silenced everyone. Got a private bullhead booked, pilot is on the pay, he's going to disappear when we land, so don't expect him as your flight home. He turned to Miltia. You remember how to fly one of those things? I'm still licensed. Miltia replied. I stared at her incredulously. What? I like flying, so sue me. She crossed her arms. When the flights inevitably get grounded, they'll be looking for our original pilot since he's on the paperwork, which will let Miltia and Melanie slip under the radar for a while. That also means the exit is going to be hot with air control on your asses before you can clear the city. Junior just nodded. At the kid's signal, I'm going to move on the spiders people, clearing out Veil of all her eyes, so you should be safe once you get back with the stuff. Me and Neo will be hitting our spots. Neo's closer to the third location, but I'll join her by the time she finishes up, then we'll go to ground for a while. Roman nodded. After this, the spider bitch will be on your ass even more, kid. She'll know you're related to me, and she was just robbed, putting 2 and 2 together is something she can do with a bit of effort. And the tournament is my best protection. I pointed out. As long as you win, you'll have nothing to fear. He stated. Well, I wouldn't have anything to fear anyways, but they didn't know that. Well, people. Junior put his hands on the counter. Let's get this show on the road. When Junior said private bullhead, he wasn't kidding. This thing was luxurious. I stared out the window, the ocean covered nearly everything as we passed by. I was surprised by how fast this thing was. Well, the continents didn't seem that far apart from one another, but even so, we cleared the distance in a few measly hours. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot speaking, we will be arriving in roughly 5 minutes. I hope you all have a wonderful time visiting Mistral and that I never see you again. I raised an eyebrow, looking at Roman. I'll miss this guy. Roman lamented. Always knew when to quip on our getaways. Neo actually looked a bit sad at his words too. What a strange pair. You're not going to kill him, right? I asked a little worried now. Do you take me for a common thug? Roman looked genuinely offended. I booked him a 2-week vacation in Mistral as a retirement gift. Oh. I just accepted that. Significantly more mundane than I would have thought. That's actually really nice on your part, I didn't think you would do something like that. Happy minions means jobs get done right. They get the works, health, dental, retirement package. This guy is dipping out early, he's been with me for... He stared off for a moment, 7 years now? Damn, it really has been a long time. Good help is hard to find, you have to treat your minions right or they'll fuck you over quicker than any police will. Huh, makes sense I suppose. The bullhead jerked slightly, I peeked out the window to see the familiar city in the distance as we began to land. Alright kid, this is where we part. I'll be using Neo semblance for us to sneak away unseen. You can be as flamboyant as possible, actually, take it up a few notches, really rub Malachite's nose in it. He smirked. Any last-minute advice you want to give me? I asked. He walked up to me, placing his hands on my shoulders. Don't fuck up. And he disappeared. Don't know why I expected any different. I chuckled. Alright, girls, I suppose we part here? Whatever. Melanie got up and left. Miltia looked at me for a moment. Try not to get yourself killed. She walked towards the door. It's hard to find someone to shop with who isn't Mel. She left with that. The place was even busier than when I was here the other day. Crowds upon crowds of people were pushing everywhere, but it was easy to spot where I needed to register. There was a large stadium to the north side, which housed many smaller arenas for these preliminary matches. Doing my best to weave through the crowds, it took me a bit to finally make my way there. Actually, there were people blatantly sitting at tables with signs for registration. Hello, I'd like to sign up. I approached. Fill these out. He pushed a couple sheets of paper to me. They were basic things, age, name, origin, that sort of thing. And there was also a waiver saying they weren't responsible for any damage as a result of competing in the tournament with a bunch of other stuff I didn't bother to read. I handed the papers back to him and he pulled out another tag and gave it to me. "You're number 702, pay attention to the screen inside, it'll announce who's fighting and when." I just shrugged, pinning the little tag on my vest and walking inside. The screen he was talking about was pretty eye-catching. It was a massive thing that hung from the ceiling that displayed which people were fighting when and in which arenas. Looking up and finding my name, I saw that I had about an hour before I would be up to fight, except, suddenly it changed, and I was given a bye. Wow, Roman's people work fast. I just shrugged, finding a comfortable spot to sit down in. I would probably be here for a bit. I was a little surprised at how many people actually signed up. While I did not have an exact figure, I did see someone sporting a 4-digit number appear on the screen. Been sitting here for about an hour now, my match already came and went, I didn't even have to go to an arena to be told I progressed. Which was an obvious thing, but I kind of just wished something happened. I looked around at some of the contestants, though none really drew my attention, except one. Standing up, I walked over to a nervous kid in the corner. I would guess his age to be around 16, about the same as Ruby, give or take. He obviously looked nervous, clutching his weapon tight as he looked around, foot constantly tapping on the ground. "Hey there, kid." I saw across from him. Hello?" He looked surprised as I greeted him. "No need to be nervous, just wanted to kill some time while I wait." I set my sword down next to me. "Couldn't help but notice your weapon." "What about it?" he said quietly. "It was a spear. But that isn't what caught my attention. It seems like everyone here has a weapon that can transform, but this kid is using a normal spear. Albeit with some additions that I could only assume was for utilizing dust, but a normal spear nonetheless. Just thought I'd strike up a conversation with someone who also didn't have a mecha shift weapon." I tapped my sword. "Oh." He seemed less on guard. He just shrugged at my statement. Never really cared about them, thought all I needed was my spear and I would be fine. That's a good mentality to have. Some thrive with choices, others just need something simple and reliant. I nodded. "I'm curious, what are you here for?" "To compete?" he answered, unsure. "I mean, some people want the glory, the thrill, or even the money. I can pretty much spot those all around here and easily guess, you not so much." "The money would be nice," he mumbled. "But that doesn't seem like your real reason." "I wanted to fight?" he asked, more of a question. "That's fair." I nodded at his answer. "It is? Why not? Fighting is fun. It's not like you're going out and doing death duels. If you want to prove yourself, go for it. If you want the thrill of a fight, to get your blood pumping as you and your opponent push each other to their limit, awesome. Who was I to judge?" "Oh," he said quietly. "Yeah." A bright smile formed on his face. "I like to fight, Dad taught me since I was a kid. But no one in the village wants to fight me anymore." He looked a little sad. "But I saw some strong people here, so I wanted to give it a shot." "I like you, kid." I couldn't help but admire his pure intentions towards fighting. "The name's Wilhelm." "I'm Rufus." "Nice to meet you, Rufus." I gave a smile. "Honestly, it seems like the kind of kid Scat Hack would love to teach. I hope to see you make it to the top 18. "Thanks," he beamed. "I hope we can fight in a round." I was about to respond, but... "Hey, I think you're up." I point towards the screen. "Number 443, right?" I eyed the tag on his shirt. "Oh, yeah." He stood up quickly. "I'll catch you later." He sprinted towards the arena listed. Nice kid. A little interested in watching him, but I'll let it be a surprise if he makes it far enough. I sighed, leaning back in my seat, until another thing on the screen caught my eye. "What?" I muttered, staring at my number being listed for Arena 11, with no opponent? Did Roman's guys fuck something up? Gods damn it. Well, may as well see how this turns out. Worst case, I have to fight some rounds, not a big deal. I walked out onto the arena, several more in the immediate vicinity, as referees watched kids beat each other up. I nodded to my own, the man standing in the middle of the arena, as I crossed my arms and waiting. "Did you happen to see your opponent?" he eventually asked. "Don't got one." "What?" There was no opponent listed for me. I sighed. "That's not right." he muttered, taking out his scroll and tapping away at it for a moment before scratching his head. I guess you win? I think you were supposed to get a bye. Woo, I said, very enthusiastically. I was about to walk out the arena when a voice caught my attention. Young man, young man. I turned around to see a woman briskly walking towards me with a cameraman trailing behind her. Could I have a moment of your time? Press? At this point in the tournament? Well, I suppose it makes sense. Getting shots of some potential black horses, hype up the finals, and whatnot. Draw up some outrage or any kind of hype regarding events that happened. Sure, I would love to give you a moment. I put on my most charming smile. She returned the gesture, fixing her hair and blouse. Young May, if I may ask you a few questions? Certainly. I gestured for her to continue. The preliminary rounds are winding down. Can you give your thoughts on your fights so far? How hard has it been to come this far? She asked, leaning her microphone towards me. Well, I haven't fought yet. I made sure to iterate. Pardon? Oh, I'm just returning from the arena where I had no opponent, must have been a small glitch or something. Seemingly misunderstanding me, she continued. What about your previous opponents? Had none. What? I haven't had an opponent yet, this was technically my fourth bye. I smiled. Her eyes lit up like she struck gold. So you mean to tell me that you have made it this far and you have not fought in a single match? That is correct. I nodded. And that doesn't bother you? That the other competitors are fighting with everything they had at a chance to win the crown? Well, luck is a part of strength, isn't it? I asked. Since my luck is the best, doesn't that simply mean I'm the best? I smirked. Might as well give her something to show. The look on her face said everything. I hadn't even realized I had fallen asleep until someone started poking me awake. Wilhelm. A familiar voice ushered me as my eyes sprang open. I'm up. I quickly readjusted myself to see around me. I saw Rufus standing next to me awkwardly, and a large crowd in the area, many of which were giving me some very unfriendly looks. Sup? The preliminaries are almost over, figured you would want to see? He asked awkwardly. Yeah. I rubbed my eyes. Thanks. Anything exciting happen? Well. He rubbed the back of his head. Saw the interview you did. Oh. I realized now why these people were basically giving me a death stare. Yeah, and people started paying attention, wondering why you keep getting the free slots. Rufus looking a little uncomfortable. We're wondering how he keeps cheating. Another voice snorted, walking towards us. A large guy, almost fully donned in armor and a massive mace on his back that clearly took on other forms. No idea who this guy was, and honestly didn't care. Cheating? Prove it. I smirked. How else can you explain getting every single bye? He shouted, gathering much more attention. Maybe it's my semblance? He crossed his arms, clearly not buying it. Then what's your semblance? Being handsome. That's not a semblance. You're right, I guess my handsomeness is all natural. I nodded my head. The big guy practically growled, reaching for his weapon before stopping. You better hope you don't see me further up. He shouted again, stomping away. Who was that? I asked Rufus. Why, you don't know? He asked in confusion, earning a head shake from me. That's Gundy, he made it to the top 8 last year. Oh. I commented idly. I guess that's impressive. What kind of name is Grundy? I think it's short for Burgundy. That doesn't make any sense. Will all fighters report to the main arena? A voice bellowed out over the intercom. Guess it's showtime, kid. I slapped his shoulder, standing up and grabbing my sword. Yeah. He gripped his spear tightly in his hands. I can't wait. He beamed. How excitable. I look forward to seeing how these people fight, their aura, their semblances. I wasn't exactly able to watch the preliminaries. I followed behind him, walking through some large doors to the other side of the large complex. I could hear the echoes of the crowd in the stands from here. It would literally shake the place when they cheered. My eyes sweeping the place, I caught a head of red hair that belonged to the supposed invincible girl. Some other faces I didn't recognize from the other area as well. A man stood at the center as we all gathered around, flanked by a couple guards. He was well built, a no-nonsense kind of look on his face. Congratulations on making it this far. His voice was very commanding. This was no small feat, you all have overcome extraordinary odds to be here. You have all bled and sweat, pushed yourselves to the brink to stand before me. His gaze shifted to me briefly. Though some more than others. With his gaze, many others followed, and everyone knew who he was talking about. It's hard to be so handsome. I sighed, much to the annoyance of quite a few people. I saw the redhead look at me in confusion and I just shot her a wink, much to her surprise. The man looked very unamused. The first round has been decided, he said evenly as the screen above us changed. I looked up at it and rolled my eyes. What a surprising result. Almost as surprising as claiming 9 buys in a row. He countered immediately. Touché. I couldn't argue with his logic. It seems someone was pulling shenanigans over Roman's shenanigans. Not that it mattered, I just need to make it to this point in Roman's mind. I looked up at the screen again, and wouldn't you know it, my opponent was Gundy. Still a stupid name. Did the organizers have a way to force matches in case someone like me shows up that just draws a bunch of bad press? I wouldn't put it past these people. The big guy eyed me angrily from over yonder, his armor making him stand out where most people just wore some light variants. He was decked out and ready to go to war. When do we go? Now. The man said sternly, pointing towards the doors to the arena. Wow, they must really want to get rid of me. I just walked out, the sun meeting my eyes and the crowd's noise practically overtaking any sound. There must have been at least 10,000 in the stands. And the number of cameras that started flashing on me was insane. Gundy smacked his shoulder into me as he walked past, ignoring everything and walking to his side of the arena. I took a peek above us, the massive screens displaying our faces and a brief overview of our fights so far. I had to hold back a laugh when I saw mine saying bye all the way till now. The people in the stands were also not wholly welcoming of me either. The shouts that were sent my way were very telling. Makes me wish I checked the news on my scroll when I had the chance. No doubt the reporter's little segment on me must have made its rounds. An announcer stood between us, tapping on his mic. Ladies and gentlemen. He shouted. The first round of the finals is here, he shouted as the crowd cheered wildly. On one end, we have a face known all too well. Hailing from Mistral, Gundy Nicholson, he pointed towards the man in full armor. Then turned to me. And a new fighter, making his first appearance with an unusual record. He hesitated for a moment. Hailing from Vale, Wilhelm Schweinorg. He pronounced my name correctly, props to him. Now, he calmed the crowd slightly. It's tradition for each fighter's first appearance at the finals to give a few words. He walked over to Gundy, holding his mic out. Gundy, you've been here before, you're experienced, what do you have to say to your opponent who has yet to fight a match? Gundy, with a cocky smirk on his face, grabbed the mic. I'm gonna pound him so hard, his mom is gonna be jealous. His eyes met mine and I just raised an eyebrow. Well, I was going to be nice. The announcer quickly took the mic back. Classic Gundy. He tried to laugh it off, much to the crowd's amusement. He took a moment to walk over to me. Now, Wilhelm, a lot of people have some words they probably want to say to you. Do you have anything to say to the people watching at home? How come you were able to avoid every fight until now? Well, that's an interesting story. I said happily, leaning towards his extended mic. Though, if you don't mind, can I give a shout out to someone who supported me all the way here? The announcer just smiled, offering the mic to me. I cleared my throat. I just wanted to thank the person who made this all happen. I wouldn't have made it here if it wasn't for him. So, in honor of the man who taught me everything I know, I have some words he left me with. I cleared my throat one more time. Go fuck yourself, Lil Miss Malachite, love Roman Torchwick. Thank you. I handed the mic back to the silent announcer. Actually, the arena became rather quiet as well. That was certainly a unique thing to say. He had no idea how to handle my words. Did they have a filter ready? Part of me wants to say no. Even my opponent just looked at me incredulously. Well then, when you hear the gong, the match will begin. He stated, clearly trying to move past that. Now. He roared to get the crowd hyped again, moving towards the edge of the arena. Let the fight begin. The sound of a massive gong vibrated through the arena. Big Ol Gundy stared at me, about to charge over, but I held my hand up. Wait! I shouted, a little surprised I could hear myself over the speakers from the entire arena. Were they able to redirect the sound that well? Remnant's technology was very interesting. What, wanna beg for mercy? I have a question. He snorted. What? Have you ever seen a fire dust crystal this big before? I pulled a crystal of fire dust about the size of a car key out of my pocket. What the hell does that have to do with any catch? I tossed it to him casually. He kind of instinctually caught it in his hand, only to stare at it strangely as it began to glow brilliantly. Boom! A huge explosion rocked the arena. A figure was seen flying out of the new smoke cloud, slamming into the side of the stadium. His body, while clearly hurt, was still able to slightly move, indicating he was living still, even if his armor was in tatters. Rune carved on a dust crystal, very effective. Without a word, I turned around and began walking back out of the arena. Only silence met my leave. I walked back into the locker room, the waiting room that the contestants were staying. Was it a smart idea to have all of them staying so close together? I couldn't say, but the security only had to watch a single area, so there's that I suppose. Oh man, what a difficult fight, I'm exhausted. I loudly declared as all eyes were immediately on me as I walked in. Do you have any idea what you did? The organizer from before looked at me with thinly veiled fury in his eyes. Won the match. I grinned. Not that, you moron. He growled, rubbing his temples. But that was also infuriating to watch. He calmed himself down. Do you have any idea who Lil Miss Malachite is? Yup. He paused, looking at me in surprise. And you still went through with that little stunt? You won't make it past today. The only reason her people haven't gotten you yet is because the tournament. I'm quaking in my boots. I rolled my eyes. There were some murmurs around me, some agreeing with the guy, others looking confused at what he was saying. Yeah, some really sheltered kids here just looked utterly confused. He just snorted. Guess we know who got you through the preliminaries now. He was referring to me dropping Roman's name. Your ass. The guy mumbled, turning to the scroll in his hands. Alright, we go the next match set up. All eyes turned back to the organizer, people eager to get started. Second match of the finals will be Rufus Hedge vs Raja Sunday. Gods, the names here are just odd. I know why they did it, just doesn't really make it any less strange in my mind. Something about a dictator in a previous era that sought to eliminate any kind of expression or individuality, so parents started to name their kids after colors in protest. After the regime faded, the naming convention had stuck, practically as a reminder. Don't remember if that was the exact reason, but I think that's about the gist of it. I watched the two of them exist through the doors I just came in from. I was a bit excited to see this, but I realized something. Is there a way to watch in person? I turned towards the organizer. He didn't deem it necessary to speak to me, merely pointing towards another door in the corner. I just shrugged, walking through. I saw a little alcove under the stadium where the fighters could peek out to watch those on the stage. It was empty, except for one person at the far end, watching the match with no small amount of interest. That was some red hair, could match mine in intensity. She turned to me as I walked into this area. Hey there, Red. I greeted the so-called invincible girl. She looked at me in surprise, registering my nickname for her. Oh, hello. She immediately replied. You're, Wilhelm. I finished for her. Right, Wilhelm. She smiled forcibly, seemingly unsure of how to proceed. I just shook my head with an amused smile, taking a notebook and pen out of my pocket as I looked towards the arena. The announcer was doing his antics again, the fighters giving a few words. Much more tame than what me and my opponent did, and I could see the hesitance when he put his mic in front of their mouths. Looking up at the big monitors, I couldn't help but notice something I didn't before. There were aura gauges marked for each fighter. I suppose it slipped my mind regarding the rules since I wasn't really paying attention. Once someone's aura hits a critical state, the match is over. Not too surprising in of itself, it was a good way to gauge fights without resulting to possible injury or death. No. What caught my attention was that they had machines able to measure someone's aura. The light of the soul, it was quantified up there for everyone to see, and this was apparently the norm. Really, Remnant's technology just continues to impress. I focused on the fight as both Rufus and Raja took their stances. They were of similar builds and similar styles, Rufus of course using his spear, and this Raja was using a glaive with a design that reminded me of China. Interesting. I muttered. What is? I forgot I was with company as I turned towards Pira. Similar builds, similar weapons, similar stances. Judging by the way they're standing, they both realize this themselves and are reacting accordingly. It'll come down to personal skill with a bit of luck. I vocalized my thoughts. She tilted her head at me, seemingly taken back by my narration. But the one with the spear appears to be younger. That's true. I gave that to her. Rufus was the younger of the two, probably by about a year. But that doesn't necessarily mean less trained. He already took a stance to accommodate his opponent's longer reach, but Raja is still keeping his weapon high. While good against a spear, it isn't taking into account Rufus's lower center of gravity. I'm guessing Raja has less actual fighting experience, but more or less equal training. That is a well-thought-out explanation. She looked at me incredulously. I had not thought that I would actually know what I'm doing and not just making a fool of myself on stage. I offered. Her lips curled up slightly, amused by my statement. I would not have put it like that. Doesn't make it any less true. I pointed out as the match began. Rufus was the one to seize initiative, rushing his opponent, forcing Raja on the defensive. Though the latter was quick to regain some semblance of a defense, not allowing Rufus to push him back too far. Regardless, Rufus held the advantage, his spear favored over Raja's glaive with its stabbing attacks at such quick succession. I saw little bits of aura clipped away, the screen on top mirroring the sight as Raja's gauge began to slowly move down. It should have continued like this for a bit, until Raja made a mistake and Rufus was about to capitalize on it, a straight pierce to the chest, except, when it would have struck, Raja moved unnaturally quickly to counter the blow, knocking Rufus back and charging him. What? I voiced quietly. His semblance. Pira commented. I remember him from last year, he made it to the top 8. He could retaliate against any blow using his semblance. But if I remember correctly, if he uses it too much too quickly, he gets fatigued. Fascinating. I mumbled, writing down some notes. I wonder how. My eyes widened as Rufus erupted in a torrent of water, a clone of him taking his place as Raja tried to slash through him. The glaive entered the clone's body made entirely of water as the true body of Rufus stepped back and thrust through the fake body at Raja's chest. When Raja tried to step away, the spear burst out in a snow-white color. Dust. Ice dust to be specific. It combined with the apparent semblance usage on Rufus's part, turning the clone into solid ice, locking Raja in place as a good hit knocked Raja's aura down enough for the announcer to declare a winner. A semblance that generates water and allows him to make temporary clones of himself? That was an amusing discovery. The possibilities there were endless, and I couldn't help but contemplate how such an ability came about. And then there was how dust interacted with it. Like his semblance accepted the crystallized mana wholeheartedly, and both were greater for it. And Raja's semblance as well. I only saw it for a moment, but was that some kind of fate manipulation? I hesitated to give that theory credence. Pira said it automatically counterattacks, how else would that be achieved? Unless it was more so a focused defense technique, overloading his body's basic functions on a sole action. Which perhaps might explain why he supposedly got fatigued easily afterwards. Are you taking notes? Pira asked hesitantly. Huh. I looked up, lost in my own thoughts for a moment. Oh. I suppose I am. I didn't expect you to take the competition this seriously, after. She trailed off, but I caught her meaning. She's trying to be polite and not call me out on my bullshit. Actually, I'm doing it more for my own research. I admitted. The nature of aura, semblances, and dust. I thought the tournament would be a good opportunity to see all three up close and interacting, so here I am. You mean you joined the tournament just to research? Well, among other things. But that was indeed my main reason. What about you, Red? Why were you competing? What do you mean? She asked, seemingly surprised by my question, like she had never put thought in it before. Why fight? Do you think it's fun, or maybe you want the prize money? She paused, looking rather hesitant. I want to be a huntress. She said after a moment. So? Plenty of people do, but they don't fight here. I shrugged. You're famous enough to get into any school on Remnant, why keep going? Well, I'm only one win away from breaking the record. Glory is it then? Want your name up in spotlights? I don't care for the publicity, admittedly. She said quietly. That can be a bummer sometimes. It makes forming relationships difficult. Are people after you for your fame or fortune, or do they genuinely like you? Makes finding friends really hard. I said idly, but the look on her face says that I hit a very sore spot for her. One which I could barely hold back on wincing from. Sorry, I didn't mean to. And no. She kept her expression neutral, but I could tell she was a little depressed by my statement hitting a bit too close to home for her. It's fine. I felt a twinge of guilt in my chest. Perhaps even a bit of sympathy as I remembered where I was a few years ago. All right, Red. I turned towards her. You got a scroll? Huh. She blinked in confusion. Why yes, I have one. She took it out confused by my request. I plucked it out of her hands, fiddling with it for a moment, much to her confusion, tossing it back to her which she almost fumbled. There you go. What did you do? Added my number. I replied. Call me, send my messages if you're bored. I got a lot of free time usually. You mean like? Yes, like a friend. I chuckled, heading for the exits. I didn't look at her gobsmacked expression, but as soon as I walked back, I felt my scroll buzz with a message, a small smile rising on my face. Hello. Then it buzzed again. This is Pyrrha, but I guess you know that. And again. I wanted to make sure you had my number as well. And again. If you ever wanted to contact me, that is. And again. Not that you have to or anything. It continued buzzing several more times. And suddenly, I questioned my choice. 16 fighters, each having a fight, and suddenly there are 8 of us left. I was reading over my notes at the moment, watching several fighters utilizing their aura, semblances, and dust throughout their fights. I had gotten some very valuable data so far. How dust interacts with semblances was perhaps one of the biggest boons I've gained. Semblances, a semblance of magic. The naming convention wasn't lost on me after I realized what was going on. Dust, which is basically magical energy, and a semblance, which is essentially a personal little spell. They interact to achieve different results, to essentially cast new spells based on the user's semblance. To infuse their personal soul-based expressions to achieve something similar to a spell, it was quite an interesting phenomenon I've stumbled upon here. When Rufus infused his water clone with ice, he wasn't merely freezing it. He was changing its underlying principles to become ice. It was honestly fascinating. I would love to sit here and research this for a few more months, but I had other priorities right now. I took out the lamp, giving it a little tap as I watched Jin come on out. Jin appeared without much fanfare this time, looking around inquisitively, practically beaming. So many people here. She commented, as people walked by. Some kind of magic around us, so we're not noticed? I put up a bounded field that kind of filters perception. I'm recognized as sitting here, but not much beyond that. I explained. How were the books? She turned back from the people, giving me a smile. Having to read something, what an exquisite experience. I could get used to it. She said happily, taking another glance around. Why are so many people looking at you in annoyance? Oh, well, I may have offended some delicate sensibilities. She gave me a dry look, like she didn't think that was everything. Well, I assume you didn't call on me because you wanted to be pleasured in front of so many people. Are you going to assume that's why I call you every time? Yes. She smiled mirthfully, taking a seat in my lap. So, how may I be of service, Master? I forcibly calmed myself down. Neither the time nor the place, unfortunately. Tell me what you think. I handed over my notebook. She accepted, reading it over with varying changes in expression. I didn't interrupt her, but my hand slid down her waist as they ran along her thighs. I gave them a little squeeze, and I heard her give a tiny yelp, but otherwise didn't react. This is mine. Was it my devil or dragon aspects that made me think this way? Hell, it may have just been the hormones of someone my age regardless. But I didn't care. This was mine. It seems you have figured many things out. She hummed. And you noticed the joke behind the term semblance. She giggled. I guess you can't tell me any more than that. Would you like to ask me a question? She rolled her eyes, the phrase almost automatic, but I could catch the very blatant hint. I guess I haven't found everything yet if you still can't openly talk about secrets. I sighed. But I suppose that is also fun in of itself. A mystery wouldn't be enjoyable if it were so easily solvable. Oh, I know the feeling all too well. She purred. I have yet to read through all the books you've given me. I can't stop this excited beating of my chest. What other secrets are you hiding? She ran a finger along my chest. Must I loosen you lips through other means? Tempting, but I can't right now. I said reluctantly as my scroll buzzed again. She huffed, shifting around. Annoying contraption, ruining the mood. I just laughed, taking it out to look, sighing when I saw who sent me another message. Jin peered over my shoulder. My, you have a woman in your lap and here you are chatting with another, aren't you just a shameless man? She stated, though her tone held more amusement than anything else. Well, I technically have a harem. Jin just blinked at me before laughing. I am not surprised. I feel like I should be offended. Shall I be meeting them then? She asked. Hell, I am Jin, your lover's personal, what do they say these days, cocksleeve? I practically choked when the words left her mouth. Where the hell did you hear something like that? I know everything presently happening, she deadpanned. She pointed towards the scroll in my hand. Oh, that is unfortunate. I admitted. To know everything happening on this world's equivalent to the internet. I almost want to question her sanity. I don't treat you like that, thought. I frowned. You don't. She agreed. It is surprising. I had expected you to bend me over the first opportunity, but you barely even touch me. Did you really think that low of me? With the way your eyes roamed my body. You were naked. I interjected. Had I worn clothes, I wonder if that would have made a difference. The corners of her lips curled up. I jest, but you have been good to me so far. I huffed. Of course, you're mine, I take care of what's mine. What a good master I've found, she leaned in, kissing my cheek. But I would not have complained about it either. I am well aware of what I offered when I suggested such a thing. Even had I been spending the majority of time on my knees, I would have no complaints. You really value this relationship that much? I asked skeptically. I have lived a very long life. She said quietly. I watched the world change over the years, and I was resigned to watch it continue to change in directions I hate watching. The few times I had been called were my only reprieve, to interact with someone or something in any capacity. It was my duty though, my reason for creation, I never questioned it. Then you come along and I peek at something much greater than this little corner that I thought was everything. So, I took a chance, and I do not regret my choice. So, use me, hurt me, do whatever you wish with this body of mine, I will not complain. I'm not heartless. I grumbled. I'm not just going to turn you into some toy. I know. She smiled. That's why you're a good person. She kissed my cheek again before disappearing back into her lamp. I like her. You do? I paused my thoughts, answering the dragon. She doesn't pussyfoot around, she saw something she wanted and went for it. I approve. Huh. I guess that does fit with Drake personality, or rather the sentiments of a dragon. I like her too, I'm glad she's going to be coming with us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our top 8 fighters. The announcer was up to his usual shenanigans to hype up the crowd. I kind of like him. He gestured towards a machine in the middle, a button with matching brackets. With the top 8 selected, we're going to begging the next round. He shouted. Every fighter will take their turn to randomize their placement. First up, we have the one and only, invincible girl, Pyranikos. He gestured towards Red. She looked uneasy by that nickname. I expected her to hold it with pride, but she really didn't seem to enjoy the fanfare around her. The way she had been blowing up my scroll, I wondered if she even had any friends. I commented on it before and didn't want to poke much into it, but fame like this must make it hard to connect with people. While not the same issues I had when I was her age, I can sympathize with being alone. She walked up, pushed the button as her name and face appeared on one end of the brackets. The cheers from the crowd erupted, though it didn't really matter yet, no suspense when there were no others present. Next, our runner-up from the last year's tournament, Arslan Altan. Another woman stepped forward, wearing a more traditional martial artist's garb. She gave Pyrrha a death glare as she walked forward. What's that about? I whispered towards the girl as she had taken to stand near me. Oh, we have history. Pyrrha said quietly. Did you steal her boyfriend or something? Why would you think something like that? Her face turned red. Oh, Red, you're too easy. I chuckled. She hold a grudge from last year? I asked, as the third person was called up, only for him to fill in an empty spot. And the year before? She confirmed. We fought a few times so far. And you've won every time? Yes. Oh, nice. I nodded. Next up, Wilhelm Schweinorg. The reactions were mixed. I definitely heard some booing in there, so I did the obvious thing and waved to the crowd. I walked up and smashed the button as my randomizer went off. The crowd erupted again as my name was the first to match up with someone else's. Looks like we have our first matchup settled. He roared to the crowd. Wilhelm versus Cobalt. Ah, the guy who was right before me. I barely was paying attention. I did see his match, and he interested me slightly because the main form of his weapon was a sword. Otherwise, he didn't really grab much of my interest. Blue hair, some leather armor, and a sword on his hip, he was pretty much the norm for the crowd here. He looked towards Cobalt and gestured for him to come back up. As the first fight for the top 8, this is a big honor here. Do either of you have something you want to say? He asked towards us. And please keep it appropriate for kids. He eyed me. I do have something to say. I cleared my throat and he looked suddenly unsure of himself. Do you know the chances of being both the first person to fight in the top 16, then in the top 8? I asked, making sure his mic was by my face. 3%. Just some food for thought. I smiled innocently. That is an interesting comment. The announcer didn't quite catch my intended jab at the organizers. What about you, Cobalt? Anything you wish to say to your opponent, or anything for the listeners out there? Cobalt also eyed me as he leaned in. This fight will be settled with skill, nothing else. The look he gave, like he was challenging me. Well, consider my pride poked. If that's what you want. He nodded and walked away. Seemingly a person with few words, I could respect that. He also didn't start insulting my mom, so I wouldn't mess around if he wanted an actual fight. Well, I guess I could show off a little. Non-canon will make the time variance authority and why they don't bother Wilhelm anymore. I paced around the room, tie straightened, clothes immaculate. This is it, Sir Wiggles. I glanced at my companion, sitting on the desk, his clothes also looking sharp. This is the case that will make or break our careers. He twitched his nose. I know, but we have to do this. I nodded. I didn't spend 2 weeks taking those online courses, getting a degree, just so I could hang it on my wall as a decoration. I slammed my fist on the desk. He twitched his nose again. Wise words truly my familiar was wise. Put on your game face, Sir Wiggles, we're heading to the front lines. I opened a portal, grabbing my rabbit. We were going to the think of it. The view changed abrupt, a courtroom filling our new surroundings. Objection, I shouted, walking in abruptly, grabbing the attention of everyone in the room. What in the hells? I looked at my new client who reacted shocked at my presence. Loki Odinson, I am your attorney for this kangaroo court. I declared at the utter dumbfounded looks of the judge and apparent bailiffs. What? Who are you? The judge shouted as several people came running at me. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg, attorney at law. I snapped my fingers, portals opening up at the charging men, strange weapons in their hands, as they fell into other dimensions. What? The judge shouted again. The TVA, Time Variance Authority, I have heard of your miscarriages of justice. Who are you? She asked again. I am Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg. I reiterated. Master of the second true magic, operation and manipulation of parallel worlds. Her eyes widened, perhaps coming to some conclusions. What do you want? She shifted slightly, I assumed she was hitting a panic button, buying some time. No matter. I am here to preside over my client's trial. I gestured to Loki. I have no idea who you are either. Loki pointed out. Quiet, criminal. I shushed him. I'm bullshitting on your behalf. That's helpful. Loki snarked. Now, we're all on the same page. I threw Talisman at the door, sealing it shut as people began to bang on it, much to everyone's shock. How? My magic isn't working here. Loki looked aghast. Your Honor, I would like to put it on the record that Loki is an amateur and has no idea how to use magic. What? I am a god of magic, you mortal. I know more about magic than you can even conceive. Your Honor, my client wishes to push an insanity plea. Insanity. For my first witness, I call Loki Odinson to the stand. I snapped my finger, bringing out a witness booth next to the judge's stand. Suddenly, Loki fell through the floor, a portal opening above the new seat, and he fell through. The judge almost reeled back by the sudden intrusions. I can walk, you buffoon. He readjusted himself. Your Honor, permission to treat the witness as hostile. Hostile, I'll show you hostile. Granted. She surprisingly said. Loki Odinson, is it true you once turned into a horse to entice another horse to mount you? Those are filthy lies my oaf of a brother's friends made up. He vehemently denied. Your Honor, let the record state that my client had intercourse with a horse. What? No. Loki is a known liar, presume everything he says is a lie. That's bullshit. See, he just admitted it. I'm going to stab you. Just then, the talisman on the door finally ripped, and another slew of guards ran inside. Their strange staffs glowed as one tried up and tried to stab me with it. Expectance on their faces turned into confusion as nothing happened, a small iridescent ripple covered me. Are you trying to purge me from the timeline? What part of magic that manipulates parallel worlds did you not understand? I looked at the judge again. I snapped my fingers, the newcomers falling into a new batch of seats, a jury bench off to the side, quickly sealed up to not allow movement. Finally, our jury is here. I walked up to the people that would decide my client's fate. Now, I know what you're all thinking, why is Loki Odinson innocent? I gave them all a look. Well, he's not, and we all know that. You are the worst attorney I've ever seen. Some of us take the oath to speak the truth seriously. I chided him. That's only for witnesses. Loki practically lost his composure. Oh, I knew that. Are you even an attorney? Got my online degree yesterday. I puffed up my chest. Sweet Odin, send me to Niflheim now. As I was saying, Loki is innocent of all charges levied against him. I slammed my fist on the bench. There's no way he molested that horse, it was consensual. I never thought I could hate someone so much that I'd only know for a few minutes. Loki whispered. If the horse dick doesn't fit, you must acquit. Seriously, hand me a knife, I'll kill myself right now, save everyone the trouble. Do you even know what charges Loki Odinson is facing? The judge spoke up again, clearly regaining her composure. Okay, honestly, I'm kind of winging it here. Loki is charged with creating a branching timeline, potentially destroying the sacred timeline and starting a multiverse war. Wow. I looked at Loki. Yeah, fuck this guy. Really, after all that? Loki looked at me dryly. You're right, even if you are a piece of shit, I took an oath to defend you. I straightened my tie again. Your Honor, I request we strike the previous conversation from the record. No. Welp, I tried. I shrugged. I guess you're going to jail, Loki. We don't have jail. Punishment is immediate purging. That seems a bit excessive, he only fucked one horse. I pointed out. I did not have sex with a horse. Loki. I looked at him. You can admit it, I'm going to judge you for it either way. I'm going to dance on your corpse. Oh ho, get in line. I chuckled. Don't worry, I have one finally card to play. I doubt it. Loki rebutted. No, my partner is an expert, he actually went to law school and didn't pay someone in lewd feet pics for a fake degree. That seems like an oddly specific thing to say. Loki reeled back. Where is this vaunted partner of yours then? Sir Wiggles, the floor is yours. I gestured towards the magnificent rabbit on the table. He bounced back and forth, wiggled his butt and twitched his nose. Well said. I wiped a tear from my eye. You always know how to make a moving speech. I didn't think I would ever feel sympathy for Loki, horsefucker. Word cannot describe the degree of which my anger burns for you right now. This is getting ridiculous. The judge stood up. Who do you think you are, we? My scroll beeped. Oh, looks like it's time. Pardon? She looked at me strangely. I didn't answer, the building shook as explosions erupted outside. Time to go. I walked over, yanking Loki out of his seat and throwing him through a portal. I turned back to the scrambling TVA members. You're all stupid, your jobs are stupid, I find your existence an affront to everything I stand for. Good day. I followed behind, portal closing right as I walked through. Loki pushed himself up, sand falling down his face as the heat of the desert hit us. Well, that was a good distraction, nicely done. I praised. Wait, you did all of that, as a distraction? He stood up. So you could blow them up? Yup. I like you. He smiled mirthfully. So, where do we go from here? If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kayashin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.